r/AskReddit. What's the most inappropriate time you laughed? A woman got on stage to sing during a friend's wedding as part of the ceremony. It was naturally a song the bride and groom chose. As soon as she opened her mouth, it became clear that she absolutely tone deaf. It sounded like an animal being tortured. I was trying not to laugh, but two guys behind me started laughing and it set off a chain reaction of laughter. Even the groom was red-faced from trying not to laugh. She just kind of sheepishly left the stage afterward. At my grandaunt's funeral, she was a big, jolly food lover while alive and is sorely missed. Everything was going along, lots of tears while the vicar was giving the eulogy, until he shared her last words. "Come on, a little whipped cream isn't going to kill me." I lost my shit. This was 10 years ago and I still feel terrible for laughing. Me and a friend were altar boys. An older woman took to the podium to read a Bible passage. The passage described how Jesus loves everyone, the sick and the healthy, the rich and the poor, the circumcised and the uncircumcised. That's all it took for a pair of 10-year-old boys to start laughing hysterically in front of a packed church. My computer's teacher in middle school told me he was run over by a car when he was a child. I laughed because I thought he was joking. He was not joking. A buddy of mine tried to fart on the pew in church and fucking unloaded a dump truck load of shit into his pants on accident. This was during a quiet moment, and I was absolutely howling with laughter. Edit. My highest rated comment ever is the story of my buddy power duking himself in the house of the Lord. What a time to be alive. We were at my uncle's funeral whose death was a surprise. I was standing with my cousin who just came back from abroad to attend her dad's funeral and was breaking down. My aunt, the deceased sister, came to tell my cousin that someone we know is apologizing for not being able to attend the funeral because she's in the hospital due to a car accident. My aunt went on describing the woman's very difficult condition and how she had an iron pole stuck into her forehead. 10 minutes later, the woman appears through the door in perfect health with just some scratches. My cousin sees her and look at me from the other side of the crowded silent room and we both can't stop laughing for the rest of the funeral. A young teenager was leaning forward in a chair at a restaurant, lost traction, and slammed their face into the table. Absolute hysterical sobbing ensued. Their parents stopped eating their salads to make sure they were okay. They were, aside from the nosebleed. I was sitting at the table next to them and cracked the fuck up at the sound of them hitting the table, and even more when they started crying. I was a horrible human being in that moment. Feel bad after the fact, but in the moment it tickled me to my core. This was at a ballet school performance. It was for kids ranging from 5 to 16-year-olds. For one of the younger age groups they did this thing where one kid pranced from one corner of the stage to the other, and then another kid would do the opposite, in a big X pattern. And they would have these gigantic shit-eating grins on their faces. Just horribly precious. Well, I started losing it at about the 15th kid, but it went on for like 40 children. By the end I was in tears and all the other adults in the audience near me had found it contagious, so everyone was just sitting there laughing at their own children. Group therapy. A kid, 22 or so but you get the idea, was talking passionately about his struggles with Asperger's and OCD. He had a squeaky voice. He started talking about his OCD categories: things that belonged under the earth, things that belonged on the earth, things that belonged in the water, and things that belonged in space. He named specific objects: rocks, bugs, etc. He said there were some things he could not fit neatly into his categories, even if they seemed like they were supposed to be in one. This distressed him. He bemoaned cars. He bemoaned women and pointed at one. Then, with no segue, announced that the reason he was there was because he snuck into the zoo at night and leapt into the lion enclosure. I had to bury my face in my elbow and turn away. Of course his problems were real, but it just seemed so out of place on a day when people were talking about who diddled them when. My daughter was in probably 1st or 2nd grade and she was doing an online math homework where she had to answer a bunch of math questions and it would give her percentage correct at the end and then re-ask the ones she missed. She was down to one question and got it wrong, so she got 0% correct. She bust out crying because she got 0%. And for some reason I thought that was so funny that I bust out laughing and couldn't stop. And then she got even madder and cried harder because I was laughing at her, which made me laugh harder, which made her cry harder. In a technology class a couple years ago, for whatever reason we were having a talk about Kermit the Frog, and my teacher told the class to quiet down and stop Kermit. Someone then said in a completely quiet classroom, in a flawless Kermit voice, "I never die." This is a bad one. We were watching a news report on coronavirus and this lady was talking about her dead mother or grandmother. She was saying adjectives about how she looked when she died. She was this, She was that, and then I hear the legendary line, "She was dead." Obviously, wasn't that funny, but I started chuckling and my family noticed. I tried to stop but actually couldn't. Had to excuse myself after they continued to make statements which I found hilarious. Funniest and most evil 10 minutes of my year. A few years ago I was participating in a religious ceremony with my extended family. I'm not religious, but my mom and her family are, so I agreed to participate. I was tasked with reading one of the sections aloud and had to read off a list of titles of the Virgin Mary. Most of them were pretty straightforward. Queen of the Angels, Queen Most Holy, etc. But there's _1_ section that starts with the word Virgin. I get to it and I'm trying not to smirk. But as soon as I said the phrase Virgin Most Powerful, I glanced at my brother and and they were grinning at me. Their grins caused me to burst into giggles and I had to excuse myself while my mom glared knives into me. My brother continued the rest of the reading. A friend of mine couldn't stop laughing in church. There was nothing funny, nothing at all, but we couldn't stop. It was so embarrassing. Me and my cousin are to this day best friends, but we were really crazy back when we were 8 to 10. In 4th grade, we both were in the school where the teachers forbid downloading stuff on the computers, and we decided to, I'm not kidding, download some porn. Let me just explain how the PCs were lined up. It was basically 4 rows of tables with computers on them, meaning that there were many kids beside and behind us. Also, there were 2 teachers going around to check on the kids. We search for porn and immediately as the results appear our 8-10-year-old asses start laughing as loud as possible. I thought to myself, yep, this is it. We're gonna get caught. One of the teacher was behind us checking on the other row, and we were laughing so hard that I couldn't move the mouse to close the window, wondering how no one even batted an eye. So I just managed to download a porn picture and close the window off, then moved the picture in a random folder, and we were never caught. To this day I can't believe the luck our dumb selves had. I was once hired to sing at a funeral, and right before I was called up, the little boy in front of me ripped the loudest fart. I dug my face into my lady friend's shoulder and my whole body trembled as I tried to keep it together. Within seconds I was at the pulpit and trying to come up with what I would do if I broke out laughing. I sang to the best of my ability at the time with a cough every now and then. We left immediately afterwards and laughed in the car till we couldn't breathe. I was browsing Reddit and started laughing in class. We were watching a Holocaust documentary. Edit. How do I have 1.6k points? This was my first post. I was getting scolded by a teacher and just started to laugh. She wrote a note and told me to get it signed by my parents. Went back home and gave the note to my dad. He started scolding me and then I started laughing again. I'll spare you the details of what happened after that. My friend's dad was driving us to go camping. He told a story about how he got in a car crash and died on the way to the hospital, only to be brought back. I laughed nervously cause I wasn't sure how to react, and he took it as me laughing at him and got offended. At the time, I couldn't explain why I laughed. That was an awkward car ride. Not the most inappropriate, but when I started my job on L&D, someone was telling another person about a woman whose baby had died. The first person asked, "Oh my God, what happened?" And the second person said it died, and it made me laugh a little because of course it died. The woman wanted to know how. Second was, a nurse approached me recently and asked me to call someone to fix a bed because we were moving a patient in it and it folded and she got stuck in the bed and I lost it. I laughed so hard. After the most horrible terrorist attack in our country's history, I was in class with some people who survived it, and one of these was a really fat girl. She was telling the story about how she survived, and it included a part where she said that she rolled down a hill. And despite the seriousness of the situation, I couldn't stop myself from laughing at the thought of her actually rolling down a hill. Yes, I know I'm going to hell. Children cursing. It's really funny to hear and catches me so off guard. I just start laughing. Hard to discipline them and convince them they shouldn't say those words. When you're laughing you're behind off. I have two. 1. An elderly customer, like 80-ish, was pushing a cart and fell over in slow motion, the cart falling on top of him. I took my lunch break and laughed the entire 30 minutes. 2. The worst one, when my older half-sister found out her uncle was murdered. I have absolutely no idea why I laughed. I guess it's because, while I knew what death was, I couldn't process murder and didn't know how to react, and I still feel bad about it years later. We were learning history in 6th grade and randomly someone said someone jumped off the bridge yesterday. Now, I laughed because it was out of nowhere, but I did get a talk from the teacher after that. Was working at a sign shop and me and this other guy were drilling holes into some wood paneling when the other guy said hey look and acted like he was going to drill into the side of his head. The drill bit he was using was one of those flat and wide ones used for boring larger holes, and while it was spinning it grabbed a hold of his hair, ripped out a chunk, and left a perfectly round $half sized bald spot on the side of his head. I had to set down whatever I was doing since I was laughing so hard, and I kept apologizing to him for doing so. He told me the next day that his girlfriend reacted the same way I did. My girlfriend started laughing at a family dinner about how her dog ate her cat. Turns out it's true, and she can't talk about it without either sobbing or laughing. Most of us thought she was a psycho for a while, still love her to death though. Edit. Forgot to add, her dad then took their dog out back and shot it. Accidentally ate some edibles in college. A friend just handed me a cookie, and it took me swallowing it to recognize the taste. I was busy playing on my phone, not paying attention to the conversation our group was having, so I'm sure he wasn't trying to fuck with me. Sitting in a class about an hour later, music history for music majors, and I suddenly remembered that we used to throw pencils at the ceiling in high school to get them stuck. I had a mechanical pencil, so I doubted it would work. I looked up and realized that the back 5 or 6 feet of ceiling were actually sheetrock, and I was under it. Well, I reasoned with myself that a mechanical pencil is tougher than a wooden pencil, so if I threw it hard enough, it would probably stick in the sheetrock. If it didn't, then my buddy sitting next to me would laugh and he'd take the blame for it, which I found hilarious. Then I started thinking about what other people would think if they knew what I was thinking, which was even more hilarious to me. I was holding onto my desk trying to hold the laughter in. Professor noticed, but he kept teaching. I never threw the pencil. At a funeral, my family was at the service for my cousin's grandmother. A priest comes up to give a eulogy and he doesn't know anything about the deceased, except some things that someone told him just prior to the funeral. He gets into it and I swear it was like he was trying to get us to laugh. He said things like, you know, it says that God knows the number of hairs on your head. Personally, I think that's kind of creepy. My dad and I just sort of looked at one another, as if to say, is this real? Then the priest went on with stuff like, it says here she liked to knit. That must mean she was very patient. This guy had next to nothing to go on, but he wasn't exactly making the most of it. My dad and I started chuckling, and trying to suppress it. Then the priest said, I remember her at bingo, and we all had our methods of good luck. Some people used frog eyes, others would bang out the ashes of their pipes on the table. Well, that did it. We couldn't stop. My dad and I were shaking from trying to suppress our laughter so hard. It was really bad. My brother was nudging me because we were starting to get looks, but it was too late. Here this dead grandmother is lying there in a casket and the priest is talking about frog eyes. Maybe from behind I looked like I was crying at least. As a kid I was a nervous laugher. Any kind of stressful situation like being scolded I couldn't help but laugh nervously. One time I was sitting on the bus turned to the side with my leg in the aisle talking to somebody and a lady was walking backwards down the aisle taking roll or something. I didn't even see her coming and she tripped on my tiny child leg and fell hard because she couldn't catch herself. All I could do was laugh and almost cry. Later I was talked to by the principal and they were angry as fuck because the lady told them I did it on purpose and laughed at her afterwards. All I could do was laugh.